I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Welcome to the Equity Mates Summer Series of 2020, brought to you by Superhero. Over 12 episodes, we're diving into some of Australia's largest and most well-known companies, as selected by you, the Equity Mates community. We'll be unpacking the company, its industry, outlooks, key financials, and in some instances, we'll also be taking the tough questions straight to the CEO. And in this episode, we are lucky enough to be joined by a co-founder and executive director of one of them. But before we do, as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How's it going, bro?
I'm very good, Bryce. I'm loving this summer series so far. I'm going to make the big call that it's our best one yet.
Yes.
And I'm particularly excited for this interview because there's been a lot of highly discussed stocks, shall we say, in the Equity Mates community. The buy now, pay later sector stocks have been very popular in the community. But I'm going to say this company may have been the most discussed. And, well, at least around its IPO, it was there was a lot of interest in this one. So I'm very excited to talk to the co-founder of this company.
Yes. Well, without further ado, it is our absolute pleasure to welcome Kate Morris to the show from Adore Beauty. Kate, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So Kate is the founder of Australia's longest running online beauty store, Adore Beauty, co-founding Adore in 2000 as a 21-year-old while studying at Monash. Kate has grown and scaled the company to over 120 million in sales and most recently an IPO in the back end of 2020, which we have been following closely, as has a lot of our community. So Kate, again, welcome, and we're very much looking forward to unpacking your journey, a bit about Adore, and also sort of the future plans. So welcome.
Great. Let's get into it.
So Kate, Adore is a true entrepreneurial success story, I guess, and we're really excited to ask you about that and what that journey was like for you. But before we do like to start these interviews by just asking company leaders how they see their own companies. So to kick us off today, would love to hear you describe your company in your own words. So what is Adore?
Sure. So Adore Beauty is Australia's largest and first online pure play beauty retailer. And we think about ourselves as being not just a retailer, but a platform that brings together over 250 brands, hundreds of thousands of consumers together, but then, links that with education and entertainment and presents beauty in a real and authentic and democratic way. So really what we want, our goal is to help our customers feel confident and fabulous when they engage with the beauty category.
Yeah, nice. So it hasn't been an overnight sort of IPO. You started 2 years ago. This has been something that you've been building for almost 2 decades now. So we'd love to hear about the journey of founding Adore and perhaps like any particular tough moments that you faced during your entrepreneurial journey, as we sort of find that's where some of the key lessons are for, members in the community.
Yes, no, we are the 20-year overnight success. So yes, the business was started, like it's actually the classic or maybe the cliched garage startup story. So yes, a bit more than 20 years ago actually, and it came about. I moved to Melbourne for uni from Tasmania and had got myself a part-time job working on the beauty counters in department stores, and which to me was the funnest job ever. I loved it. I thought it was great, but it was very clear to me, I think, once I'd been doing this for a little while, that so many women who were approaching the beauty counters in department stores really hated the whole experience, and it was very intimidating, and there was like a lot of sales pressure, which I knew because I was on sales targets that I had to hit myself, and so many people were finding this experience of having to go into a department store just really, just intimidating and unpleasant, and it was making them, they really didn't feel confident or great after having that experience. And to me, that didn't make any sense, because the whole point of the beauty category is to make you feel like your most confident and fabulous version of yourself. And so, and to me that that whole channel was a bit broken. And when I started to see, this is, you're thinking 1999 here, and we started to see online shopping, become a bit more of a thing, or we could see it happening in the US, not happening very much in Australia. And I thought someone really needs to do this for beauty, because I think there is a lot of people who would prefer to shop this way, and being able to take their time and have access to all the information. And there just wasn't anything. And so I decided that I was going to start the first one, having no business experience at all, and no money and no connections or anything. And ended up pitching my boyfriend's dad, who ran a small motel near Melbourne Airport. He was the only business person I knew. And pitched him this business plan, and of course, having taken it to the banks already and getting pretty much laughed out of town, as you can imagine. And he said, yes, all right, I'll lend you the money, and had to go and try and get a website built, because of course it wasn't, you couldn't just get like Shopify or whatever, something ready to go, if you're thinking back 20 years ago, and then set about the process of trying to convince the entire Australian beauty industry and all the women in Australia that shopping online for beauty products was going to be great.
It's been no small feat, and I imagine your boyfriend's parent, or your boyfriend's dad at the time, would be very happy with his investment, with Adore now worth a little bit over $500 million. So he's
it was actually a loan, and so probably he should have gone for equity.
Oh, no.
Spewing for him.
But yes, it was certainly speculative at the time.
Yeah, asking your boyfriend's parents for a loan as a 21-year-old uni student, that's a big step to take. Can you tell us what that conversation was like?
Well, he was just such a lovely and supportive man, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately, because I think he would have he just would have absolutely loved to see this and to see what the business has become in the last few years. But it was more, he said, okay, right, well, you need to go and write a business plan. And of course I had to go and, borrow like one of those For Dummies books from the library in terms of how to write a business plan. And so I went away and, we did that exercise, and with my boyfriend as well, who's my co-founder still. And we went and pitched it to him, and he said, okay, well, I think this will be a really good experience for you both. And I think he was fully prepared to lose the dough, and they weren't, particularly well off. But I think what a tremendous thing to give someone permission to try and possibly fail. But, I just think that's one of the greatest, gifts that we were ever given was that permission to have a go at it.
So, Kate, you started in 2099, 2000, and chose to go purely online with the e-commerce approach, which is it's pretty fascinating, given I guess back then the penetration of online shopping would have been incredibly low relative to today. What has the last sort of 20 years taught you about the broader shift in consumer shopping preferences in retail? Alec and I both have come from a retail background and have certainly seen how COVID has changed the retail landscape. But what about sort of the last 10 years or so? What have been some of the big changes you've noticed?
Well, I think really the fundamental shift that we've seen, and e-commerce is kind of, it's only the technology that's enabled it, but really the big shift is a shift towards customer centricity. So if you think about the old department store model, particularly for beauty, well, the customer has to, has to go in there themselves at a time when is maybe not convenient for them and approach any one of the sort of separated counters, and there's so many barriers put in place for them to be able to access information. Everything is very much around the brands and the retailer controlling that experience, and the customer is treated like a student or like a patient, and they have to go up to the counter, and receive very limited pieces of information and be told what to buy, or have to ask permission to be able to buy what they want to. And that's just not customer centric at all. And so really what e-commerce has done, I mean, yes, there's the whole, extra convenience factor, but really what it is about kind of democratizing that access to information, and enabling customers to be the one controlling the experience and controlling how much interaction they have. And so that's I think the really fundamental and disruptive difference around what we've done. But then sort of more broadly than that, I think the change that I've seen over the last 20 years is, the way that customers are thinking about e-commerce. And if you think about it, sort of in the early days in Australia, people who were adopting e-commerce they were kind of only shopping online if it was cheaper to do that. And for us as a premium beauty retailer, we weren't really competing on price, and so that sort of didn't really help us very much. And then it sort of shifted to being more about convenience. And we'd been working on our customer experience for a very long time, and getting amazing results. And so that sort of worked well. But the thing that we're seeing now is the customer shifting towards a more of a discovery mindset. And so we see in the beauty industry, it's not just all around repurchasing the products that you've tried before. We're finding very much now that customers are willing to discover a product entirely online and buy something online that they've never bought before. And for us, that's where things have gotten really fun. And we've been able to develop a lot of different ways of connecting with our customers, and of creating content to help them with that discovery piece. Our podcast, we have our own podcast, Beauty IQ Uncensored, which is Australia's #1 fashion and beauty podcast. We have a YouTube channel that we launched earlier this year from lockdown, actually, which presented additional logistical challenges, I'm sure you can imagine, but and that's had millions of views already. But ways that we can actually help customers navigate to and discover new products to solve their concerns that they've never tried before. That's where things have gotten really powerful for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the parts of the business that I was interested to see is the focus that you have on the content side, and the it's very rare. I can't really think of another online business that does do the amount of content that you do. Where do you see that side of the business sort of going? Is the idea to just grow into not necessarily a media arm, but like where do you see that going?
Look, we do kind of think of ourselves in a way as being kind of a combination of retail and media. Because if you think about the way the beauty industry used to work, it was all very much about, the big brands would advertise in glossy magazines, and hopefully that would at some point lead the customer into a store to go and look at a product. And I guess we're kind of replacing both parts of that loop, the discovery part, and then also actually the fulfillment of the purchase, and then obviously the sort of the post-sale service as well. So I guess, yes, the way that we think about it is very much having that integrated model. And the really key point in all of that is to continue to maintain the customer centricity and the authenticity as our focus, because I think the problem with the way that sort of media as a standalone business model works is that you kind of paying for eyeballs, and that's not necessarily leading to the best outcome for the customer. And that's why we don't sell advertising or anything like that, because actually the really important thing is that we create content that's useful for the customer, and that we can continue to do that and continue to actually maintain kind of a brand agnostic voice.
So, Kate, we've touched on a couple of elements that have contributed to Adore's success: the customer centricity, the authenticity, and then the media arm as well. I just want to introduce some numbers for our audience to get some context. So in terms of sales, in 2010, Adore did $2 million in sales. By 2016, that was $16 million. By 2019, it was $70 million, and then this year, 2020, $120 million, which is a pretty phenomenal growth curve. Aside from those factors that we've already touched on, is there anything else that you sort of attribute that growth curve to?
So it's really funny, actually, when you talk about the growth curve. If you look at the first half of the growth curve, it's just really, really flat for a really long time. It's the weirdest looking hockey stick you ever saw. Look, I think what it comes down to is having a commitment to customer experience in terms of doing all of the little things right over and over and over for a very long period of time. Because what you're seeing there is us, acquiring customers and then them sticking to the platform. And so if you look at the patterns of behaviour for our customer cohorts, once they're retained from the first year to the second year, they don't go anywhere. They continue to stay around, and then every year they purchase more frequently and they spend more each time they purchase. And so what we're kind of doing is building up these layers of customers who rely on us, for information and a fantastic customer experience every single time. But, to be able to maintain it, the really hard thing is to continue to do it year after year after year after year, and to continue to scale it as well. If you're thinking about, okay, well, we've still got an NPS of, nearly 80. And to do that when you're increasing your volume of orders and volume of customers you're serving every year, it's actually really quite hard. But that's kind of what we've done, is we've continued to build up these really loyal and sticky customer cohorts that have continued to come back to us. And then obviously now and I guess COVID was sort of an accelerant for that, in terms of lots of people suddenly discovering e-commerce all at once, and that sort of slow channel shift from bricks and mortar through to online has been happening for a long time. And you see, here in Australia, I think we're still only at about 12% of retail being online. If you look at China in the beauty category, it's like pushing nearly 50% adoption. And so it's just kind of one of those channel shift things. But, if you want to hold on to those customers, you have to prioritize the customer experience over and over and over.
More and more retailers are obviously moving online or adopting that sort of hybrid bricks and clicks model. So I guess the question would be, how will Adore continue to really compete and differentiate yourself from increasing competition? I imagine it is going to be around the remaining customer-centric, but what is it about Adore that makes your view on being customer-centric better than the others that sort of have that similar idea?
Yeah, sure. And look, the beauty category's always been a super competitive one. And if you think about us, trying to lob in there as a garage startup with no funding and saying, right, I'm going to take it up to Myer and David Jones, who are just these, giant behemoths. We had no right. We had no right to succeed, honestly. But I think we've been very good at continuing to innovate with the customer in mind, continuing to be agile, and the business model that we've built kind of combines these three main elements. So obviously you have the product selection, and we have a unique product selection that spans across prestige brands, across professional brands that are usually only found in like skin clinics or hair salons, niche and hard to find brands, some prestige brands as well. So our product selection is unique. We have an incredible customer experience that people kind of gloss over and go, oh, yeah, but anybody can do that. But the truth is that they don't. And I think that's what our customers discover, is that yes, if you've tried shopping with any of our competitors and then shop with Adore, like, the experience is just not comparable in terms of how fast you get your order, and really highly trained and brand agnostic people on live chat to help you out, and free samples and all of those sorts of things. And then also you combine those things, so the brand, the product selection, the customer experience, and then with our data and content capabilities, and it has this kind of flywheel effect that really continues to just reinforce the success of the model. And that sort of personalized and rich content, where we're able to help our customers continually discover the products that are going to make them feel amazing, and then give them that instant gratification of getting your order the very next day, it is quite powerful.
So, Kate, before we jump into, I guess, the process of going public and the IPO, we'll just take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
So, Kate, it was 20 years between founding Adore and then going public, which is a long time compared to some of your tech and e-commerce peers. Where Bryce and I, we're doing this podcast, we're seeing companies a year or two into their lives becoming public companies. So I guess the first question is, why did you decide to stay private for such a long time?
Look, it's funny. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I guess, we're not an overnight success, and we've grown sustainably and profitably over 20 years. And I guess the way that I thought about going public was, this is such an important step in building something enduring and actually capturing what are all of the things that have continued to make this company great for the last 20 years, and how can we make sure that, that we protect and nourish those things so that we continue to grow for another 20 years. I guess I didn't think so much about it as being sort of a decision to stay private. It is more making sure that the company was where it needed to be at a particular time. And this company was actually bootstrapped for most of its life. We didn't raise any capital at all for the first 14 years, unless you count that first $12,000 loan, which probably most people don't count that. So I don't know. I mean, I guess everybody has different approaches. To me, if I'm going to build something, I want it to be something good. And I think it's really important to build the foundations first, right? And you don't do things until you're good and ready.
So 2020 was obviously a pretty chaotic year with COVID and a lot going on in markets. Was the decision to IPO made pre-2020 and this was your target year? If so, why 2020? And when COVID hit, did you kind of reassess and go, uh-oh, do we need to push this?
Look, 2020 was chaotic on many, many levels. Look, we'd been thinking about it for a while, and that was kind of the plan that we'd made with Quadrant, who we partnered with in 2019, and that was what we wanted to build towards. And we kind of sketched up a roadmap in terms of what the company needed to look like to be ready. How we needed to sort of get our full executive leadership team in place, and we'd kind of recently completed a big warehouse upgrade, and we needed to bed that down, and then we had some kind of milestones in terms of, okay, well, how many active customers did we want to have, and what sort of size in terms of revenue and all of that kind of thing for it to kind of make sense as a listed entity. And then COVID hit, and we completely stopped thinking about it, and because it was you just had to knuckle down and go into crisis mode, which, if you've been a bootstrap business for 20 years, you're really quite well suited to crisis mode. So it's like, oh, okay, we're doing this again. Very good. And it was just knuckling down and going, okay, how can we make sure that we keep our staff safe and keep our customers happy? And that was really all we thought about for the first few months. And then I guess, we'd experienced just this huge influx of new customers discovering the platform and continuing to repurchase, and the sales trajectory was amazing. And then we kind of got to, sort of midway through the year and went, oh, actually, suddenly the size of the business is where we projected it to be in 18 months' time, and it had just fast forwarded us, and all of a sudden we looked and just went, oh, well, if we're going to go, we're actually where we plan to be now, and can we cope with the idea of doing an IPO in lockdown? And in the end, I decided, well, it's not like we're doing going anywhere.
Yeah.
So why not? It was more, okay, we'd gotten ourselves to where we felt that we needed to be able to take that step. And then, the window was open, and it hadn't been for a while. And And we thought, well, if I've learned anything in the last 20 years, sometimes you've got to take your moments when they come.
So as part of the IPO, Adore raised $270 million. What does the company plan to do with that money?
So it was part primary and part secondary, but as far as the primary, it was really giving us the flexibility that we need to be able to, the business has always been profitable, so we can execute on our organic growth plans with, through cash flow. And so we didn't necessarily, need to be able to fund the growth, but it's more about just having a bit of flex on the balance sheet and to be able to take any, additional growth opportunities that might come up, as things sometimes do.
So let's turn to people and culture, Kate, because over the last 4 or 5 years of doing this podcast, we have spoken to many, many fund managers and investors and experts in the field, and they all sort of point towards management and understanding what drives you and how you react in crises as sort of one of the key indicators as to whether or not a company is going to be successful or not. So for a retail investor, though, it's actually really hard to get that information and hear it right from, the mouth of a CEO or executive director. So we'd love to speak to you about how you think about leadership, and maybe we'll start with your leadership philosophy as executive director and co-founder. And have you developed one? How do you sort of think about you as a leader?
Yeah, so what I really think about is values first. So as we were growing, we realised kind of early on in that scaling, when you're all of a sudden bringing lots of new people into the company, that you have to have guiding principles in terms of making sure that you hire the right people and that you continue to keep all of the things that are good and that work well about the company and that, all of the existing people enjoy. And so we went through a process with all the team at the time, and this is going back, 12, 13 years, of setting out what our values were as a company. And these are very much living values. So what we didn't want was to do that thing where managers put together some kind of, list of things and it, gets put in a frame on a wall somewhere and then nobody ever talks about it again. Like, it's just, what is the point of that? No, it's very much around a set of kind of decision-making principles that our team can use every day. So one of them, for instance, is doing the right thing, which sounds flip and everyone's like, oh yes, well of course you do the right thing, but the way that we interpret that is that we have to do the right thing by our customers, we have to do the right thing by each other as a team, and we have to do the right thing by our suppliers as well. And sometimes that's painful, but you have to, values absolutely must come first, even when it's difficult, even when it's embarrassing, if you have to, admit to a supplier that, you've made a mistake, or, you've realized that you've let customers down in a particular way. You have to put those values first, and you can't ever compromise on them. And that goes for when you're hiring people, when you're measuring performance, when you're looking at, all the decisions that you have to make, because sometimes there might be a path of action that you think, oh, well, that's probably the easiest thing to do. But if it doesn't align with the values that you set for yourself as a leader and for yourself as a company, you absolutely cannot compromise on that ever. And that's been such a useful thing as we've scaled, and we have a team of, over 200 now. And I think our culture is as strong as ever. But only because we all continue to live the values on a day-to-day basis.
So, Kate, speaking of leadership, one thing that, to add to everything else that you had to do in 2020, you also transitioned to a new CEO. Tennealle O'Shaughnessy took over Adore as CEO in late August this year, so right before the IPO. Can you tell us a little bit about, what you were looking for in a new leader, and I guess what the process was to try and find a new CEO during COVID?
Well, actually, we'd started looking for a new CEO like in September of last year. It was just that it took us a long time to find the right one. And then, of course, she had her notice period. So we actually hired her earlier this year. So it was like in March or something, I think. And then, so obviously everything changed quite dramatically in the meantime. But for us, or for me, what I always wanted and had been, and we've been planning for a number of years to bring on somebody who could help to really guide Adore and to scale, its culture and also obviously, and obviously the business itself, for that kind of next stage of growth. And I think one of the things that I've learned is when you bring the right people in and really amazing people with the right kind of experience sets and the right values orientation, is that, the impact that it has on the business is extraordinary. So we'd already seen that. And so it was more about, okay, we're going to need to find a rock star. And we looked and we thought, it's probably not going to be somebody from retail, because I don't want anybody caught up in old ways of thinking. And it's definitely not going to be someone from beauty, because again, there's assumptions that you kind of develop and that you probably don't see anymore when you've been in industry for a long time. So we wanted someone that had that experience of scaling fast growth businesses and innovative and agile businesses, but that most importantly was aligned with our values. And Tennealle is just absolutely amazing. So I'm just as the months go on, I'm more and more thrilled with our decision. So yeah, she's incredible.
So speaking of sort of fast scaling over the next period, let's turn to the future and what sort of the next 12 months hold for Adore. But particularly if there was sort of one thing that you wanted to focus on over the next 12 months, we speak in business about prioritizing and getting the right things done first. What would you be choosing or focusing on as your number one priority?
Sure. So, first and foremost, we think we just have an absolutely massive opportunity to continue to grow and scale the core business. And so that's really about, how do we continue to introduce more and more customers to the Adore platform, because we know that when we do that, we're building these sticky and returning cohorts that, continue to come back to the platform for years and years and years afterwards and actually become more valuable the longer that they stay. And so there's obviously a pretty sizable opportunity there. And to continue, I think we have a particular opportunity to build brand awareness, and we started doing that a little during COVID. I think if you look at the 20-year history of Adore as being sort of a self-funded and bootstrapped business, we've never been able to invest as much in brand building as we would have liked, because of course you have to focus always only on the things that are directly measurable and immediate, but we know that that's kind of left a gap in our brand awareness between ourselves and, say, the department store competitors, which obviously everybody knows. And so we know that when customers discover us, they absolutely love us and they stay for years, but there's still a lot of customers out there who haven't discovered us yet. So we have a very big opportunity there. There's lots more that we want to do as well around continuing to build loyalty in our existing customers as well, because obviously we recognise that, if you can move the needle even just a small amount, then that has a huge multiplier effect across the business. So we've just sort of soft launched our mobile app, which is very much designed around kind of an engagement and content-led experience to support returning customers and support that discovery piece, as well as just, being a convenient way of reordering, which of course, is sort of table stakes. And then also we have a loyalty program rolling out in the first half of next year, which we've done a lot of sort of individual pieces of work around loyalty and data and all of that sort of thing, but really tying that together for customers and building a bit of a community around that too. We have, and then this isn't just one thing that we're focusing on at all, is it? So,
all rolls up into one.
I have to say it's typical Adore style though. Like if we're not going a million miles an hour, we'd probably get bored. So, and then we're developing some private labels as well. So we have a few projects underway there. Obviously, we have a huge amount of data and insight from our existing customer base that we're using to develop some brands to fit nicely in some gaps alongside our third-party brands. So we're pretty excited about that. That's been my baby actually. So I'm having great fun at the moment. There's tubs of samples all over my desk. It's quite a mess.
So, Kate, over the 20 years, bootstrapping this business from a startup to what it is today, you've constantly been dealing with risk and managing risk. You made an early bet on e-commerce, and then you worked to disrupt some of the bigger department store players. If you think about Adore as a business now and the risks it's facing, what would you say is the biggest risk for Adore's business right now?
Look, I mean, I think any business with a digital presence has to take cybersecurity extremely seriously, and we absolutely do. And that's always front of mind for us. That's probably my biggest fear. There's competitors obviously, and certainly everybody. We've probably poked a bear somewhat with our IPO because perhaps there were some who didn't realise quite how big we'd gotten, and I'm sure that will continue to. It's always been a competitive and aggressively competitive space, and that's I guess we're kind of used to that, and I think we would continue to back ourselves in that respect. And then I think, it's operationally, the challenges of scaling are, can be difficult sometimes, and trying to, get all of the different pieces to work together seamlessly. But obviously we continue to hire some pretty amazing people to make sure that we're always kind of laying the track down ahead of us before the Adore steam train comes rolling along. So again, I think we've gotten pretty good at that for the last 20 years, but you can never get complacent, right?
So, Kate, firstly, a massive thank you for your time this morning. Very much appreciate you coming on the show. Before we close out, though, one more question. And if you were to think about Adore in 10 years' time, with all the disruption that's going to continue to come and all the plans that you want to put in place, what does success look like for you?
I'd say world domination. But
that's fair.
Why not, right? Like
exactly.
That's where you've always got to be going for, I think. I think we will see, the impact of e-commerce to continue to scale. And if you look at, where China is now, they had the same penetration levels as Australia 6 years ago. So I think, all right, well, 10 years time, that gives us a good amount of time to catch up there. Yeah, look, I really want to see Adore as just fundamentally making a change in the way women get to interact with this category, and what we really want for all of the people buying beauty, and it's what is it, an $11 billion industry in Australia right now. We want to see everybody shopping the Adore way, and feeling confident to say, okay, hey, if you want a 10-step Korean skincare routine, we can absolutely help you with that. If all you want to do is just chuck a bit of mascara on in the morning, that's also perfectly okay, and we'd love you to feel great about that too. So yeah, I think bringing that sense of just confidence and freedom to to all of the beauty shoppers, not just in Australia, but in other markets too.
Yeah, nice. I hear that Korean skincare routine's actually top class though, so looking forward.
Well, look, we can chat afterwards. But,
No. But look, Kate, as I said, very much appreciate you coming on the show, giving our audience the opportunity to hear directly from the co-founder of some of the companies that they're able to directly invest in themselves is a pretty good opportunity and definitely give them a lot of value. So thank you. We're looking forward to seeing how Adore plays out, not only on the markets, but in its business plans as well. So appreciate your time.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Equity Mates Investing Podcast, a production of Equity Mates Media. Please remember that everything you hear in Equity Mates Investing Podcast is general advice only. The content has been prepared without knowing your personal objectives, specific financial circumstances, or goals. The hosted Equity Mates Investing Podcast may maintain positions in the companies discussed. Before considering any investment, please read the product disclosure statement and consider speaking to a licensed financial professional.